Okay, so I'm gonna give y'all a part three. It might not be as long as part two, but I'm gonna do what I can with the time that I have. Thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for staying tuned. Um, so they took my sister back to the hospital. I gotta go back to part two because I had something wrong in there. I told y'all that the apartment was an abandoned apartment. It wasn't abandoned. Actually, him and his wife was living in that apartment, and the police went to the landlord and asked them who name was on the lease, and they gave him his wife's name, and they ended up giving him his name. So that's how he found out what the man name was. So once he found out what the man name was, of course he put a warrant out for him, catch him right quick. So the police get back to the hospital and they like, we don't want your sister here. Like, they like take her away from here because I'm afraid that, if he found out that she told who he is, that would be the first place that he would look for her because he know her mom was here. So my auntie ended up taking me and my little sister and my older sister all back to her house. I have a brother too. Well, I had a brother. But he was like the oldest, so he stayed there for a little while and then whatever. But so while we over there, the police ended up putting the story on the news, so it was like on every news outlet in the city. So a woman, I don't know her name, but a woman ended up seeing the news and she called a detective. And she asked the detective when did this happen, and he said last night. So she was like, my brother-in-law came here today and he bought me a gun. And he told me that I couldn't use the gun because he think that he had unalived somebody with it. And so she said she asked him, what you mean? Like, boy, what are you talking about? So he told her that two women had tried to rob him and his homeboy. And he ended up shooting one of them. And he think that he unalived her, but he wasn't sure. So she was like, okay, so she kept the gun or whatever. So the detectives go to the house. They get the gun from him, and from her, and they do a ballistics test on it. So the bullets that was in that gun and the gunpowder, whatever, all of the ballistics matched the bullets that came from my mama. So so the detective's like, okay, now we know who it is and we know who done it for sure. So after that happened, my auntie and my grandmother had stayed at the hospital. One of my aunties and my grandmother stayed at the hospital. So they were sitting in the waiting room because my mama was in the ICU and they couldn't go in there. So they were sitting in the waiting room. And my auntie said that a man walked into the waiting room while he was in there. And he was just walking around and looking like he was looking for somebody. And so she said, her and my grandmother, they both was just watching him. And she said it just looked crazy that he was just walking around like he was looking for somebody. He didn't take a seat, like he wasn't waiting for nobody or anything. So she said at the same time, her and my grandmother each grabbed each other's hand and they just squeezed it real tight. Like they both knew that was him. But they didn't say anything to each other. They just, they just looked around and they watched him. Well, after he couldn't find who he was looking for, he left. And as soon as he left out of the waiting room, my auntie called the detective. The detective came to the hospital. I don't know how fast he must have got there because as soon as the man was leaving out of the hospital, the detectives grabbed him and they took him to jail. So they started questioning him. They asked him what he was doing at the hospital. He said that he was visiting his wife. Not his wife. While he was out here raping my little sister and killing my mama, his wife was in the hospital dying of cancer.